Devil, my friend. Fashion. Things to wear. Possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rockin' Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies. We got some shirts. We got some tanks coming up. We got some booty shorts. We got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rockin' Horror.
Horns up. Fangs out. Fangs and Infernos, the thing that's always incredibly important as you go out and about in your little lives, knowing that I'm in the dark shadows and Devil's staring up at you from beneath, is that you never really know where a little bit of incestuous danger could lie and lurk. And it's always important to make sure that you're keeping yourselves on the right track and you're never making a wrong turn. That being said, Devil, my friend, as spoken on and decided upon by our Fangs and Infernos, I think it's about time that we have a discussion involving the letter W for the alphabets of horror.
Yeah, a little bit of wrong turn action, which is kind of funny because it comes, this episode sort of comes right after we just did our horror remakes with the Hills Have Eyes. So, it's got a little bit of theme. We've got a little bit of theme of, being in the wrong place at the wrong time with a bunch of redneck ancestral hillbillies, which is never good. But,
inbreeding.
But I mean, what's not the love about Wrong Turn? Other than the fact that I always feel like this was the best, the one of the better Wrong Turns. There were a couple of the other ones eventually were okay, and then there were some that were like really, really good. I remember our good friend that we talked to before, but with Adam Green, his partner Joe Lynch. I know he directed a Wrong Turn. I think it was a Wrong Turn 3 or 5, or I don't remember which one that he directed. But I like that one. I like the one that he did. This one was definitely the stronger point. My only gripe on this one versus the other one is there's no nudity in this one, where the other one has nudity, and it's like, come on, you have Eliza Dushku, like, who does not want to see her half naked, at least a little bit. It's like, come on, man, it's Eliza Dushku. Everybody wants to see her, but I always thought this was a pretty good movie. I like the cast. I like it's got the, like I said, Elijah Dushku's in this. The main guy that's kind of gets involved with these guys in the crash or whatever is Quinn from Dexter. From Dexter. He was he was Dexter's one of Dexter. He was one that was dating his sister Debbie. So I was cool seeing him kind of young and stupid. But yeah, you gotta love these movies. Just like everything else, it's always like, hey man, where do I need to go? Oh yeah, you need to go down this road and go down that road, and it's like, it's always fun. It's always stupid. You never know what you're gonna get. And yeah, you're gonna get stuck in the middle of the woods. You might hear a little bit of little banjos playing maybe, or a little bit. You might get you might hear that. You might hear a little, squeal, pig, squeal. You never know what you're gonna get. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like I said, when it comes to these, it just makes you like, you know what, like, traveling horror movies do, like with Hostel and like, Wolf Creek and all them kind of do. These kind of movies do the same thing too. It's like, you're going, from point A to point B. Maybe you're going to vacation and you're from Salem, Massachusetts, maybe, and you want to go to California to go see some friends, and you're like, hey, instead of taking this I-86 or whatever and this main road that takes you this way,
That just gets you there.
Takes this back road so you can go and Me and you have definitely have ventured in some back roads that almost killed us at one point.
That we have.
So we weren't being killed by ancestral rednecks. We are killed by almost killed by nature.
Yeah.
But sometimes the back roads are never the good roads.
Facts, Devil, absolutely. And ironic too that we happened to be going to see a band that had dead in their band name title, which I thought was actually really funny in retrospect when I remember like thinking about that later. Be like, Jesus, there might not have been a better fucking like band title to go see when you come close to death as you're driving. Thanks, nature. But no, absolutely. One of the things though I always found about Wrong Turn, I mean, Jesus, considering there's fucking six of them, is that when it came to Wrong Turn, I'm definitely with you. Where like, yeah, we love a little bit of our sin and skin, especially when there's certain members of the cast that we don't hate or in the movie. But also that being said, I do think one of the stronger parts of this movie is the fact that less is more. It's the less skin. It's actually technically the least bloody of the entire franchise as well, too. And don't get me wrong, Fangs and Infernos, if you like your bloodlust, you're still gonna like Wrong Turn. There's plenty of blood to go around. But considering this movie's coming out at a time that like saw the remake of Hills Have Eyes. Um, anyway, basically that early 2000s, not slasher, but just, gore heavy, bloodfest type movies were really, really coming into their own at that time. Um, it, that's one thing that I always thought was actually particularly strong about this movie. Because, I mean, the funny thing is, too, you've got like the movie starts off with a couple of like interesting kills that you don't even see, you just hear them. And then, just like you said, it gets into that typical, like, kind of how stupid can a motherfucker be type design, where it's like sometimes taking directions from a local that you think are trying to help you is sometimes just not the right way to do it. Like sometimes it's better to be like, where do I have to go to get back on a main road? And again, like even though this is the early 2000s, GPSs were a thing, but they still weren't the most common thing in the world either. So like, we didn't have quite as much access to like, dr- you know, everything being told like where to go and how to get there. But also at the same time, these movies do often take place in one of the less not exactly a Verizon zone, So there's always ways to kind of play around, especially since that whole like, oh God, no reception, of course, is like so common with a lot of these types of movies. But anyway, I mean, I like the movie overall. I'm a big fan of the three main inbred villains. I think they're really, really cool. I like the way that they're designed. I mean, you've got, one of them that's like a pro wrestler guy, outside of doing the movie, and then you've also got like one of them, which is like who's like a very established actor now, which I think is super duper awesome in Three Finger, and then just the whole idea of like you kind of have like the bronze, the brains, and like the softy when it comes to like a lot of these kind of inbred things. Just like when we were talking about Hills Have Eyes when it came to, Market Basket, she was our softy when it came to that. But overall, I mean, I like the idea of the movie, the trying to get away, the finding yourself in the places where you're not supposed to be, like hiding hiding in the house that you shouldn't have been there to begin with, but you're finding victims that have nothing to do with you, and you're actually finding people that you knew, but you're finding all way too many car keys for anybody that would have that many cars, and IDs and cards, and basically they're stumbling across all the collecting that these cannibals, for lack of a better term, are collecting as they're taking in car after car for their junkyard and just collecting and collecting and collecting. And then it's a matter of like, can we get out of here quietly? And they think they've done that, and then the spring on the door is giving it away, and homeboy decides to sacrifice a little bit of hand flesh in order to try to keep the door quiet, which works, but ultimately doesn't work either. and then it becomes like the main part of the movie, which is which is getting where they think they're going to be safe while they're competing up against people that know the ins and outs of the area.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing I always like about this movie. I mean, forwarding ahead but not getting to the end, but it's actually the end of the movie that I kind of find kind of funny because, like you said, you have that guy that's like telling them like, "Oh yeah, take this road," and then eventually but they come back, and you're like, that guy is like, "Oh fuck, man, these guys survived," and you're like, "Oh shit's gonna get thrown down," and then all of a sudden, all the dude takes is the fucking map. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
taking this goddamn map because now we know where the hell we can know where we're going now. But yeah, I always thought it was kind of funny. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like when we talked about The Hills Have Eyes,
Mhm.
where in this movie these the three inbred redneck guys or whatever have been doing this for a long, long time. But it kind of reminded me, like I said, it reminds me of The Hills Have Eyes, where you have this pacifist guy that all of a sudden becomes a badass. You got this like, you got Elijah Dushku's character, which is, she looks like she can kind of hold her own, but then like she weighs like a buck 05, soaking wet,
Yeah.
wearing probably like 100 pounds of nickels in her pocket. So,
Right.
you
She's
have
more
like some.
just toned than anything.
Yeah, she's so tiny, and then you got the main guy's character. It looks like he's kind of just he's like a nerdy kind of dude. So it's like you got these two people who are ultimately beat up these and outsmart and outmaneuver. Not saying that outsmarting these guys isn't that difficult to do because these guys probably all have like a you know, the brains of like a 2-year-old or something like that. But then, like you said, they've been doing it for a long time. They know the woods, they know the area, they know exactly where everything is and stuff like that. So it's like it's always fun when you see that. It's like, I mean, granted, yeah, you gotta. I mean, to kill off all the characters, you'd be like, okay, what's going on? But it's always weird
Yeah.
because it's like, you know what I mean? To me, it would make more sense if you had somebody who was like, like a badass to begin with, or somebody who's
Yeah.
like a survival person, somebody is like that. But I always like that when they do that in movies too, sometimes, where it's like the guy that you think is the one who's gonna be the one to survive, because yeah, he's in his element, and then he gets capped first, and you're like, well, they're all screwed. But yeah, that's what I said. It kind of reminded me of this, where it's like, yeah, you got these guys that are going around and they're trying to run away from these people. They go up into that big huge tower thing at one point, which was like I mean, other than the fact that they were going to try to burn it down, that was probably the best place to be because you have the high ground. They have to
Yeah.
get up there to get up to you, man. You could have just I would have just opened up that trap door and threw shit at them while they're fucking eventually you hit them, they're going to fall down. They're going to fall down pretty hardcore and pretty far up, man, and they're not going to
Yeah.
survive that bump. But yeah, yeah, it was just kind of. I always thought that was weird. But like I said, I mean, to each their own when it comes to these kind of movies. But you're gonna have to have, maybe that's the moral of these stories is just because you don't think that you're gonna survive, you may be the last person to survive or stuff like that. It's not always the biggest and the strongest and the baddest that survives. It's just people who are a little bit smarter than other people, or know when to run and know when to fold and know when to
Yeah.
fold them and know when to call them and all that, whatever that song was. But
Know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Nah, Devil, for sure, man. But it's also one of those cool things too, because like I like a lot of the movies of that time too. There's a little bit of like cheeky humor too in this movie because you've got one of my favorite like kills because the timing of it is just so hilarious that like I couldn't even react outside of being like, yeah, right there, and that people like you, dude, peeps like you, like when they're running for their lives and they're kind of like trying to get around from the away from the cannibals, and then they come across like the police officer guy, and they're like trying to let him know, like, yeah, dude, like they're out killing everybody, and they're like, and he's like, killing people, like killing who people, and then whap, the dude's just dead. And I was like, yeah, people like you, dude. like,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite kills in the movie because the comedic timing of it is just so hilarious. Where the guy's like, "What do you mean people are dying? Like what people? What are you talking about?" And then he's gone. It's like, "Yep, exactly. People like you, just like that." And then even when it comes to like, you always tend to have that big explosion. And so you've got the at the time the survivors, and they're like they've incapacitated some of the cannibals, and they're like, well, let's sacrifice them and kill them and make sure they stay down forever and burn them alive. So they like explode the cabin with like a gas tank, and you don't really see. You kind of figure as much that that's the death of two of the cannibals, and then they're still making their escape before you realize, nope, didn't quite get them.
Yeah.
And that also leads to, one of my other favorite kills, just because, like, stylistically, I just think it's a really great kill. I remember watching a little behind the scenes thing about the CGI as well as the practical effects that they used to do it, which I thought was just really cool. And I thought it was pretty cleanly done as well. But you were talking earlier about the idea of like throwing things down like rocks or anything that they could use to like knock these cannibals down the tree. Well, they thought they had only gotten so far and they thought they were somewhat in the clear, and then that Lizzie Borden style axe just whap right across through the girl's mouth, leaving half of her head sitting on the top of the axe while you watch her body just falling down into the abyss. And I loved that scene so much because, like, not only do I just think it is a creative kill, you know, an axe to the face, an axe to the head, an axe to the neck is nothing new, but doing it, whatever, 100 feet up in the air through the mouth, leaving the head balanced with the body just hitting every branch on the way down. I'm like, I gotta give you that one. I can't hate that kill. That's up there. That's probably my favorite just kill of the movie. Like I said, love the sheriff's deputy because I can't. It just makes me laugh. It's a good one, and it catches you off guard when you don't know it's coming for the first time. But it's just got that comedic timing. But I just love the idea of just a good old fashioned thwap and watching the body just tumble on down, which I thought was it was creative. And then eventually seeing the little behind the scenes, makeup meets digital, I was like, that was cool. I thought they did a good job because, even back then, because it's been almost 25 years. It's been over 20 years since this movie came out, and there's so much advances even in digital now. And even sometimes nowadays they don't get it right. But personally, I can't hate on them for the way they executed that one 20 years ago. I liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I always thought that was a cool scene. Like, yeah, yeah. My favorite kill is obviously is the sheriff one too. I always just laugh at that because yeah, like you said, he's just like, "Who's getting killed? You're getting killed, motherfucker!" Bam, and it's like, what do you think is gonna happen? It's the same thing with like when they're doing that, they steal the dude's truck or whatever like that, and they're like, I'm like, you don't think that they're not gonna know where other stuff is, and it's like, yeah, it's like these guys know exactly what they're doing, but ultimately when it gets down to the end of the movie, it's like, yeah, maybe some brains beats brawn and cannibalistic tendencies or something like that. But yeah, I always, like I said, I mean, I always would hope for these kind of movies. This is one of those ones where it's like, when it comes to these, you kind of tend to usually go for like the, root for the bad guys or root for the good guys and stuff like that. Where like in this movie, it was kind of like a little bit of both, where it's like you kind of root for the good guys again, but then you're just like, you're just like, man, they're just doing for trying to survive. These guys are doing some stupid shit, and then
Yeah.
you're just like, they're just talking and then they're arguing between each other. Those two don't even know each other because, like, like, the scene where with the Dexter's guy and then Eliza Dushku, it just happened to be that their Eliza Dushku and her crew were already crashed, and he kind of crashed into their crash car. So you know what I mean? He's just like, yeah, so no, so like the whole like chemistry between him and Elijah when they're all walking through the woods. They're all like seemed like they've known each other for years or something like that. It was like it wasn't like where okay, this guy's a complete stranger. Or like why you know even whenever they start getting into the cannibal stuff and he's like holding on to this like you said holding on to the door and stuff like that. I'm like okay, I'm all for I'm all for helping people, but like I said, to me, I've already explained it once in my ability, unless it's like a family member or a loved one, but even then, I'm more than likely going to be the person from Wolf Creek that just fucking dipped out and just left. You know what I mean? That's going to
Yeah.
be me. My chances of survival and is always like, don't ever go back. Don't ever, go. Oh man, I shouldn't have left these people. Because then you come back. Because then what happens? You get captured and you get killed and stuff like that. Luckily for these guys, Elijah and Dexter dude survived this movie. But yeah, it's like I'm like, why? I'm not trying to. I mean, being heroic for a little bit. I mean, granted, like I said, Elijah's pretty nice looking to look at. So I mean, you might want to try to do a little bit of stuff to impress her. But I'm like, I don't know, man. That's I would have been like, here, have her, and I'm going out.
Right. But and that's the other thing that's also kind of like I'm glad you bring that up because that's always a little something that kind of like drives me a little crazy in some movies, where it's like I'm always kind of like what the way that they all met each other with that car accident is just kind of the way that it is. But they seem to overall get like really chummy really quickly. And I was always kind of like, if I'm the guy that's driving the car that hits the other car with the flat tire because of the razor wire, like, there's a part of me that's bitter as fuck because I'm like, I'm just going about my business. Like, I think he was going to, if I remember correctly, I think he's going to like a job interview or something like
Yeah,
that. I'm
some
like,
like that. It states away.
something involving work. And I'm like, I'm pissed as fuck that not only am I trying to get to this opportunity that I'm scheduled to be at, and that's now all fucked up, but the idea of crashing your car into something that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place is something that would like just ultimately really piss me the fuck off. And the one thing that it's not enough to ruin my experience with this movie because I like it. I like it overall. I've seen it a bunch, and I do consistently like this movie. You're definitely right. Again, like you said, I forget exactly which number it is. There's a few of the wrong turns that I do like overall, and then other ones I'm just like, it's just another movie to me. But anyway, it's the idea of like, it I don't hate it enough to like really butcher points off my score as we move towards the obituaries, but yeah, just the idea of like them being overly chummy where it's like, well, you fucked up these people's car, so even if they're able to get their tire fixed and replaced, their car's crippled now. Your car is toast because and you can't get to where you were going. And in general, it's not like you had a flat tire. Your car is just dead where it sits now, too. But y'all kind of became obnoxiously cordial, like really quickly. And I'm like, that's not real life. But anyway, that's just the way that it is. But again, like you said, can't be mad at the guy for maybe, thinking with his little head when he realized the other people that were involved in that wreck and that everybody's safe. And as everybody else drops, you still find yourself getting, a little bit closer, a little more elbow to elbow with Eliza Dushku. So you know what? I'll give it to Dexter guy. Can't hate on him for that one. But
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, I do like this movie a lot. I do think it's incredibly solid. It's there are solid movies throughout this series. This movie is definitely the best of the series. Again, I think they did it right with less is more. And then it does vary, of course, as depending on different people's like whether they like the director like we do with Joe, or if you like your sin and skin in this way, or you like your bloodlust in this level. I'm sure it's going to be different strokes for different folks when it comes to the other movies in this series, but I do personally think it can be there's no subjective thinking. It's pretty good. It's solidly unanimous that when it comes to the Wrong Turn series, number one is number one.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, yeah, when it comes to all of that kind of stuff like that, I was thinking too, maybe he thought Elijah Dushku, he's like, if I hang out with her long enough, I'll get to see Chrissy, Missy, and all the other badass chicks from Jay and Silent Bob,
Yes.
her little clique.
That'd be awesome. Could you just imagine, like, I Jennifer like Schwab. I'm just gonna say Smith because it's easier that way. Could you
Yeah.
just imagine like Jennifer Smith or like Ali Larder just rolling up with like shotguns?
Yeah. No, I was like, oh yeah, rednecks, you thought you were that? Well, I just called the freaking my click commander chicks, and all of
Exactly.
a
You
sudden,
know what?
Chrissy, Missy, and
Remember our names fit the rhyme scheme.
yeah, have them come out of nowhere, and like all of a sudden, the redneck comes out of nowhere. He's like, oh, I think I just filled the cup.
Absolutely, three fingers sitting there like, whoa. Or even Dexter guy is just kind of like, okay, crashing my car might have just become the best decision I ever made.
Yeah, that would have been that would have been a cooler, that would have been cooler if he would have ran into like their van, ran into the Diamond Heist chick van instead of who they did and be like, okay.
The fucking like almost kind of like the mystery machine from the freaking Jay
Yeah.
and Silent Bob Strike Back as well, where it's kind of like, yeah, let's cut out their kidneys and sell them on the black market. All right, getting a little bit too off topic there when it comes to it, but you know how much that devil and I love our Kevin Smith and love our Jay and Silent Bob. So if you like yourself some Elijah Dushku and you've never seen Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, go and check it out because it's awesome because we absolutely promise that you will fill the cup. Now, that being said, let's talk a little bit about the obituaries. When it comes to this one, Devil, overall, I do find it to be just a consistently solid, like, you know, inbred, redneck, bloody horror movie. Do I think it's overly elite? No, I don't. As a consistent movie itself, I look at it as about a 6.5. However, I do bump it a half a point. Seven is the number I'm going to go with because I do think it's solid. It does have a quality story. I do like the kills and the way they were done. Like I said, I enjoyed certain combinations of practical effects mixed with the digital. I thought it just overall kind of worked. I don't think it's an overly epic movie, but it's a movie that I do enjoy on a relatively consistent basis. So while I do think the movie itself is an average movie at a 6.5, I do enjoy the way it was shot, directed, and ultimately CGI'd enough to give it a little extra love to a 7.0.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the seven. Like I said, to me, like I said, it's not the best cream of the crop when it comes to like your redneck,
Yeah.
inbred kind of the hills have eyes kind of monster, cannibalistic film movies. But yeah, but then like I said, when it comes like you said earlier, even though I think that there are other wrong turns that were as good, I still think that this is overall probably the best wrong turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, so definitely like I said, I mean I definitely agree with 7.0 as a good score for this because like I said, it's fun, it's entertaining,
Yep.
it's got its bloodlust. Like I said, I mean, granted, yes, there's no nudity, but there's enough of Elijah Dushku's you know body parts. You see a little bits and pieces of her. You get to see a little stomach action, maybe a little bit of like
Enough tank.
thong, but
Enough. Oh yeah. Oh, I was like, yeah, enough, tank top type jeans.
Yeah, yeah. So you definitely get to see her. She's not wearing, a parka and a hoodie and some sweatpants or something like that. And like we were saying before, if you haven't seen Jay and Silent Bob, she's not wearing a skin tight, S&M suit, which that would have been a little bit better. But anyway, you get what you get, and unfortunately, that's all we got. So it's a little bit of eye candy for you. And like people said, I know a lot of people who are Dexter fans, and like I said, I can't remember that actor's name, but he played Quinn, the main guy in this movie. He's a good looking actor. A lot of girls have always talked about how they thought he was the one of the better looking actors in Dexter. So I mean, if you're into guy eye candy, he's got he can give it to you too. So I think 7.0 is a good lay round for, like I said, it's not breaking any molds, but it's entertaining enough that you can pop in Wrong Turn 1 every so often and still find it fun or entertaining, and you get to laugh at the expense of stupid redneck cannibalistic incest breeding idiots.
Yeah, Desmond,
Yeah, Desmond, that's his name.
with from Dexter. Yeah, so
Yep.
yeah, Desmond Harrington officially for all you Fangs and Infernos. But yeah, so that's the way it's going to be there, Fangs and Infernos. Absolutely. You get enough of Elijah's undergarments mixed with a proper outfit for the lack of any of the devil is sin and skin. So for all of you Fangs and Infernos that like that, you're still going to get what you enjoy out of this. But again, it's got great kills, it's got solid blood, and overall it's got a story to tell. And look, for all of you guys that like this movie, which we hope that you do, because Devil and I get our own enjoyment out of this movie on a relatively consistent enough basis. There are 5 other movies in this series, and again, there is nudity and more blood as the series continues on. So if you like the first movie, which we trust that you will, we leave it up to your own devices to check out the other movies in the series to see what you think about them. And again, check out Joe Lynch's directed movie, because that one definitely is solid. Because if you like what Joe does and everything that he did with Adam Green and the Holliston series, like, you kind of know what Joe's all about, so you'll definitely understand his style when it comes to that. But that's the way it's going to be there, Fangs and Infernos. A 7.0 in your alphabets of horror for the letter W in Wrong Turn. That's the way that it's going to be. Make sure that you guys are definitely checking us out. Remember, as of this recording, and as it shall be when it gets released to you as well, don't forget it is holiday season, and nothing will please your loved ones or your friends, possibly even your enemies, more than shopping with Vampire Devil. Please support our friends Mark and Lizzie with Rockin' Horror Apparel. They're the ones who take care of all of our merch. So go to the Vampire and Devil collab category at rockandhorror.com and shop till you drop with everything. We got t-shirts, we got tanks, we got hoodies, we got hats, we got all that fun stuff. And by supporting us, you support Mark and Lizzie, who we love to death. Also, make sure that you guys are supporting independent museums and everything that they have to give to us, supporting small businesses and going out and checking out really, really interesting historical stuff. So check out and support our buddy John, who owns the Salem Witchboard Museum, as well as the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore. And of course, with that same type of holiday action, check out our friend Saren and Twisted Vine and her husband Chris with Twisted Vines, because they do creepy decor, they make homemade Ouija boards, they do so much insanely awesome, awesome stuff. And of course, make sure that you guys are keeping yourselves warm in the cold winter months with Brutalities. So many amazing flavors, so much just awesome, awesome product, and incredible collabs. Of course, not only with us, but with, based off Deep Blue Sea, collabs with Wednesday 13. So much amazing stuff that they've got. Make sure you guys are checking out our friends at Brutalities and rocking out and staying warm in these cold months. So we appreciate you guys so much. But again, that is the way it shall be forever and always on the obituaries. Wrong Turn, Alphabets of Horror for W, a 7.0 per Vampire, and of course, the Devil. So that's the way it's going to be, and we will see you soon. Horns up. Fangs out.
Hey, it's your boy the Devil, and we're here to talk more about those 90 horror comedies. This time we're talking about 1999's Terra Firmer. Haha, Troma's Terra Firmer. Oh, this movie's got it all. It's got blood. It's got guts. It's got titties. It's got lots of titties. It's got a lot of disgusting stuff. It's got our boy Will from Tromeo and Juliet and Ron Jeremy in it. Oh, yeah, who doesn't love Ron Jeremy? Anyway, I love this movie. It's so much fun. It's got so much comedy and so much ooky-uckiness. Weird shit. It's got a blind director, Lloyd Kaufman, in it. Who doesn't love our boy Lloyd Kaufman in the Trauma team? Ha! It's got titties. Did I say it's got titties? It's got lots of titties in it. It's got lots of blood. It's got killer women and women killers and all kinds of good stuff and good for your brains. So check out 1999's Terra Firma, because the devil said so.
Devil, my friend, I think we should have a little quick conversation about everybody's respectful celestial abodes, where it be my little coffin, where I lay my head at night, or at times that you feel that you just want to go back down to make sure that hell's not getting out of whack while you are away. Let's talk about it. Vampire and Devil's newest partnership in Twisted Vines, our dear friends, Chris and Sarah and Cadaver.
Oh yeah, you like scary stuff, you like horror decor, come and check out Twisted Vines. They make all the kind of cool shit, all for your house, all kinds of scary shit. They love it. You like to bring back the horror, you want to scare your neighbors, you want to conjure up a friend to talk to, you want to conjure up somebody bad, you want to do some bad stuff to them, you go to Twisted Vines and get some of their merch.
Absolutely, for sure. Everything is completely handmade by them. So if you need a little friend, maybe a round set abode, maybe you want to conduct a little evil towards a friend that was a friend, maybe no longer a friend. They have voodoo dolls they can do for you to allow for such activities. But you know how much we love our Ouija boards, my friend, and they make all of those by hand. They took care of your beloved vampire with a nice Nosferatu board, but the devil, he happens to be a Munsters fan. And not only do they do boards as traditional rectangles, but they can put a little bit of coffin flair in them.
Oh yeah, look at that coffin shape Munster board. Yeah, you wanna conjure up Mr. Herman? You wanna ask him how Pet Cemetery was? You can do it on this board. Oh yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. So again, thank you so much to Twisted Vines for partnering with the Vampire and Devil podcast, and make sure that you, Fangs and Infernos, are checking them out on their Facebook page, on their Instagram pages, and making sure that you are checking them out as they move around the country, showing their craft off at all of the various horror cons and oddities expos that they love to do. So absolutely, my friend, of course, man, horns up, fangs out for our friends at Twisted
Fangs and
Vines.
Infernos. Let's bring all of you back to a time long ago where we talked about movies that had movies about them, that the devil, as well as your beloved vampire, fancy a little bit more than their original counterparts. Devil, my friend, let's revisit remakes that we think are better than the originals.
Yeah, it's I know we've talked about it before, and we're gonna bring back this sore subject for some people, because
Suck
some
it up,
people
Buttercup.
some people don't like or don't believe that sequels can be better than their originals. And yes, I agree on 99.9% of the time. But yeah, there are some definitely that we believe is better. Like I said, even when we talk about this, even when we talk about any of the movies, whether or not we're talking about sequels, even movies that we talk about here when we do the showdowns and stuff like that, it's definitely opinionated. You know what I mean? To me, we've talked about it before, but the great, movies that are considered the mega of all movies, like Rocky Horror Picture Show and, Lost Boys and stuff like that. Some people may not agree and think that those movies are lame and totally horrible.
They're
You're
allowed
wrong.
to be they're allowed to be wrong.
No, they're allowed to be wrong, but that's beside the point. You know what I mean? You're allowed to have your opinion, and that's kind of like what we do when we do these remakes. You know what I mean? We're gonna talk about some movies that we love and some ones we've talked about before. We're gonna go into the Hills Have Eyes, which we've talked about the original,
Yep.
Wes Craven when we did our Wes Craven one. And like, we're not saying anything bad about Wes Craven and or the Hills Have Eyes. We're just saying we believe that this was a little better of a remake. It's a little bit more of a newer telling. And then, we're gonna talk about some rats. Some
Absolutely.
Willard, some Crispin Glover, and like I said, I'm a huge fan of the original Willard. I was a huge fan of the sequel, Ben, that came out, but I've always been a fan of Crispin Glover's Willard. I've always been a fan of this one. I always thought that this was a better remake. So, so if you don't like those two choices, well, I mean, you're going to be in for a long time. And the people who do enjoy or want to at least hear us rant and rave on why we think these are better remakes, you better strap in because it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Absolutely, for sure. And don't get me wrong, Devil. Like I loved your pick in Willard. I really did because Crispin Glover is Crispin Glover. I mean, he's so fun. Like he is very much so like before we get into things, a little bit of like just for the sake of context, like Devil can attest to this. I am a very big fan of Nicholas Hoult. I've become an incredibly big supporter of his work. I think that as a character actor, the stuff that he does, I still feel is very underappreciated, but I do think it's getting to a level where people understand his skill set. So when you look at something like Nux in Mad Max, you look at something like Renfield, you look at something like the new Nosferatu. I genuinely have become quite a big fan of Nicholas Hoult. I think he's excellent in what he does. And that's the one thing that I've always loved about Crispin Glover, just like yourself, my friend. Like he's got that knack of character actor just expertise. Like the guy gets it. And that's what I really love about him in particular. And to make it speedy, you've got, of course, Willard, which we're about to discuss. We've got, Back to the Future, which is what kind of got him going. And then you take something kind of obscure, just kind of in the middle, where you've got something like Charlie's Angels, where he played the creepy thin man. And again, of course, Fangs and Infernos. Look, Crispin has an amazing filmography, huge catalog of stuff he's known for. I just chose those three specifics. One, because it's relevant to right now. One, because it's kind of his debut to a certain degree. And one that's just kind of unique in the middle that kind of like people just kind of are familiar with as him playing that character. But that being said, I think that was an awesome thing. Same thing with The Hills Have Eyes when it comes to that movie. Like it doesn't specify, it's not specific to a character like Willard will be when Devil and I get into it. But when it comes to this movie, it's based off Wes Craven. Of course, you guys know that from our episode. We talked in depth about not only The Hills Have Eyes, but we also brushed over The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. And this remake also has a Hills Have Eyes Part 2. We're not going to get into that. Don't really need to go there. That is irrelevant because Devil and I are going to discuss right now Hills Have Eyes, the remake, versus Willard. When it comes to Hills Have Eyes, I've always actually considered this actually as a very high regard when it comes to better sequels. I actually enjoy this movie quite a bit. It's right up there for me with the Dawn of the Dead sequel, which I wouldn't put the Dawn of the Dead sequel as a better remake because I still enjoy the original OG from George of Dawn of the Dead. You and I went up to Perryopolis when we went up to Monroeville. It was very nostalgic. It felt very intimate. It was an amazing experience that you and I got to be in that mall for Dawn of the Dead. But I don't want to get off track when it comes to that. Anyway, when it comes to Hills Have Eyes, I absolutely do love the remake of this movie. I thought it was very well done. I like the design of it. It does have the benefit, of course, when it comes to a lot of remakes, of having some money behind it. It was a full on theatrical release, it had a really good look to it. I love the casting of it. I'm a big fan of CSI New York. So, like, I loved the fact that Sid in CSI New York was Lizard in Hills Have Eyes. So I had an attachment to that character. But Devil, when it comes to you and me, one of the other characters that you and I have a connection with is Market Basket.
and loved the fact that one of our beloveds from Holliston was in this movie as well as, Miss Ortiz. We definitely love that. But overall, brother, I like the design of this movie. I think it's got a good design to it. I think it flows very, very well. I mean, it's brutal right from the start. And sorry, Fangs and Infernos, but the fact of the matter is Devil and I can't really talk about this properly without talking about certain things. But it's an incredibly brutal intro when it comes to, like, sexual assault. It's a trigger warning, it's got rape to it. You know, Unfortunately, and Mrs. Vamp didn't watch this movie with me, but I know she's familiar with the movie. But there's animal brutality to this movie that she is, of course, not an advocator of, not like you and I are either. But this is a very, very brutal movie, pretty much right from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, and the reason why I feel like this movie not only is the better remake, it's when a lot of times it's because of who does it. You know what I mean? And right off the bat, finding out that Alexandra Aja was going to do this film, high tension. I love high tension. We've talked about hot tension,
Oh,
before and stuff like that. We love that movie. It's so brutal, and like I said, you take a
yes.
movie where like this movie, yeah, it's got that brutalness to it. There's just there's just no strings attached. I mean, it's just going crazy. You know what I mean? It's like just everything. Like I said, I'm not saying that the original wasn't brutal. I mean, there was a
No.
lot of like the scenes and the things that they did in that movie were super super crazy too. But just the craziness in this one. I mean, the fact that he's putting the gun right to the baby's face in this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got obviously you have the dog that gets killed. The dog gets killed. In the original one too. But just the brutalness of him, just them shooting. To the woman. The wife's freaking right in the head, shooting the mom right in the gut,
Yeah.
to the point where it's just like, and I love the fact that, it explains more of this one too, where it's got that backstory with the fallout and the fallout from all the almost said toxic waste, not toxic waste, that's Toxic Avenger, the nuclear fallout and stuff
Yeah.
like that with this, where it basically kind of do that. And I love that. I love the fact that it's mainly all like prosthetics and things like that. They did a little bit of weirdness with CGI, not really CGI, but like the girl that's in it, her eyes all jested up. They just kind of
Yeah.
warped it with some like, with some visual effects and stuff like that. But I love the fact that, Greg Nicotero did a lot of the film. He was actually one of the characters in this movie too. So I thought that was
Yep.
badass. But yeah, I just love what I mean, the dad, which, Buffalo Bill, you know what I mean? He didn't rub enough lotion on his skin because he got burnt the fuck up.
I
Just
know.
that scene alone with him just burning and on that freaking cross is just crazy. It's just like I love that, I love the fact that even like I said, even in the original where you have, the same, you had the dogs, obviously Beauty and the Beast, were the names of the dogs in the original one. And you kind of had that.
Honestly, shout out to one of my favorite Disney movies.
Yeah, but it's funny. But this one, man, like even when you get to the scenes where you know Beast gets his revenge on some them killing Beauty, he fucks them up, man. I mean, he
Oh
tears.
yeah.
I mean, and it's hardcore. Ripping throats, ripping flesh, just ripping the shit out of these. It's pretty brutal. I mean, it looks freaking gory as shit, and it looks like these guys are like literally being attacked by this like menacing German Shepherd, and it's like the whole entire time you're like, fuck yeah, you're rooting for this dog because them taking out obviously taking out Beauty throughout the movie. But yeah, I just love it. It's one of those ones where like it's weird in this movie and in movies just in general, like, I mean, I always kind of root for bad guys, but then sometimes when bad guys are really really bad, you kind of
Yeah.
don't want to root for them, like. And it's kind of like in this movie where you're kind of rooting for them a little bit because some of these characters were really annoying and needed to be taken out, but then you're like, okay, yeah, you're doing this, you're watching, you got the underage girl, you're doing shit to a baby, you kill the dog. Yeah, when they start getting their just due in this film, I love the fact that yeah, the dog gets it. And who doesn't, when we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this movie, like who doesn't love a beginning of a movie where your character is basically in I guess one way to say it, he's basically a pussy in this
Yeah.
film. You know what I mean? Doesn't like guns, he doesn't do this, he did that, to being, I guess, the opposite of a final girl, a final guy in this film, to being like a badass, and you're just like, holy shit, talk about like a 180 from character from the beginning of this movie, where you're like, this guy's a puss. You can't stand him. He's just one of these guys that like, you know what I mean?
Like
It's
you
just like
want him to
you
die.
just want him to die. You're like, oh God, man, like he's a piece of shit. He whines and he doesn't like this, he doesn't like that. You know what I mean? Some would say, the liberal things and stuff like that. Just the way, he just has that California kind of feel to him. Like this guy's a douche nozzle, and then by the end of the movie, you're like, fuck yeah, this guy is badass, man. I love the fact that he just kind of turns it around.
No, absolutely, for sure. I mean, also shout out because again, a lot of you Fangs and Infernos know where, where Vampire lays his head. So a little shout out to Vanessa Shaw for, from my beloved Hocus Pocus. So it was very, very cool to have another movie to talk about that she's involved in. But no, absolutely, Devil. When it comes to this movie, I mean, it's like a brutal body count. I mean, it's a solid, 17 kills, which is great when it comes to this movie, as far as like any, Fangs and Infernos or people who are into that kind of like bloodlust. But the thing I also have always liked about this movie, and again, it's not different from the original because it has that same design, it has that same conflict of conscience, is you've got Laura's character, Lauren Ortiz. That's my Market Basket reference from any of you Fangs and Infernos who are unfamiliar with the Holliston series from Adam Green, that Devil and I are quite fond of. She's a main character when it comes to that. So anyway, is the idea of what's right versus what's not and self-sacrifice. The idea of like you get the main care, the main kind to a certain, it's not like the main survivor, but still the main guy that you originally think is just kind of this obnoxious puss that you just really want to get off, turning into this kind of Rambo-esque guy as he's trying to get his child back. And then there's that combination of the cannibals just doing what cannibals do, mixed with trying to get his child back, but also mixed with one of them understanding right from wrong. And that's the thing that Lauren's character puts forth there, where it's like she's also the one character who's not overly deformed either. But when you have the idea of this, like, she understands that it's one thing to do what you need to do to survive, but also sacrificing anybody that can't fight for themselves is wrong. And that was the thing I always found very, very interesting about this movie, was they really put it out there. They really didn't leave it up to curiosity as like, well, is this person conflicted? Is it really just or is it that they're part of the family and they know that this is what they have to do to survive? No, you could definitely tell in this movie that she had to decide between right and wrong. And that was something I always found like super duper cool. But it's also a very interesting multiple dynamic as well, because you also have the original, couple that's dealing with a rape situation and there's trauma coming from that, but as a survivor, but they're also still protecting themselves. They're booby trapping their basic like camper,
because that's kind of the thing. It has a very like where people are familiar with the Hills Have Eyes. They might be a little less familiar with the remake, but a lot of our Fangs and Infernos are going to be very familiar with something like House of a Thousand Corpses. And I bring that in where you get these people, they're traveling, they're going to meet family, but they stop at this, this point of interest. And what they think the person, as in Captain Spaulding, is sending them on part of the tour to check out more spooky spots, he's really setting them up for failure. It's that same kind of thing. These people are traveling, they're stopping at a gas station, getting directions to where they need to go. They're like, oh, well, no, go this way because it'll save you time. It'll get you to where you need to go. Knowing that it's going to blow out your tires, you're going to be stranded, and you're basically just going to be fucked by the people that live in that area. And it's that same kind of thing where this horrific situation happens to this girl, and she's able to survive it, but I use that very loosely because I'm not trying to downplay any potential trigger warnings to any of our fans that follow us and support us. But when it comes to this movie, you've got this survivor of this ordeal. She's able to get out of it, but they know that they're still trapped in this situation. So there's these double stories going on where you've got the home base being protected, while you've also got the heroine, for lack of a better terms, trying to, you know, get back their stolen child. And it's a very just interesting, almost two-story dynamic where it's not set up like an anthology. It's just these two situations that are kind of running parallel.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of funny when you're talking, you talk about, them getting sent to go this other way. There's part of the movie that always made me laugh too, was like, the guy, the clueless guy that was like the wuss that becomes the badass. He goes out and goes, yeah, yeah, it's pretty weird. Like, oh, I walked all this way and there were these people's cars and all this stuff was just left there and blah 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 blah, and they're like, well, yeah, like, then he was like, well, yeah, no, this is where the road ended. He didn't think like, okay, the guy told us to go this way. He's like, oh, maybe we missed an exit. No, the guy just straight up told you to go this right and just keep going straight, and eventually you'll run into the highway or something like that. Then you realize that, okay, this crater is basically the end of the road.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're going to be like all these cars, like, okay, maybe something's wrong. He just comes back with the, fishing pole and a teddy bear, and even like, yeah, which is funny because they bitch and yell at him, even the brother and stuff like that. Like, well, come on, man, what the hell are we doing with a freaking fishing pole? But then eventually they use the fishing pole, the wiring, all that to make the trap. So it's like, no, maybe that fishing pole, you used it for real. But yeah, I love the fact it's like that. Like I said, I love the fact that the old story of the nuclear fallout. I love how each one of the characters are completely crazy. You got the Mama, the big huge Mama, this character. You got the guy that's a head, that's just basically like this big giant dome head, kind of just like watching them and stuff like that. I love the fact that, yeah, that's like, you got the bronze of the guy that's just like running through the damn walls and fucking people up, and yeah, I just love the fact that this guy who is a pacifist basically comes into their town. These guys have been doing this for this clan has been doing this probably for hundreds of years, because you can see all the cars and all the things. That's been, they probably killed a couple hundreds of family, and then you have this one pacifist dude with one dog all of a sudden takes out them. And it's like,
Yeah, just
how much of a hills have I badasses are you really if you're getting killed by one German Shepherd and a pacifist?
right. No, 100% Devil for sure. But I mean, it's got like really good action. I mean, you've got pickaxe kills, you've got all this crazy stuff, but there's definitely a lot just going on with this movie. But also at the same time, very similar to the original Hills Have Eyes, as we move our way towards the obituaries when it comes to this, is the fact that, look, you get your kill, they get the baby, there's this kind of family reunion until you realize that you're being watched through the eyes of binoculars of somebody else. And that was always something I always thought was really cool when I watched it originally. And this is before, because I saw this movie back in the theaters. Like, that was even before you even officially knew that there would be a sequel. And then again, just like the OGs, there was an OG sequel, there's an OG remake. I mean, there's a remake sequel. Um, and I love cliffhanger stuff. Some stuff I get more into than others. You know, sometimes I'll see the kind of cliffhanger and I kind of have that reaction of like, well, if there's time. But then there's other movies that kind of I'm like, all right, I like that and I'm down for another round. For the record, when it came to the second round, they watered down my whiskey.
Yeah, I
I
mean
was
yeah, the thing about the sequel though, as much as the remake of Hills Have Eyes 2 isn't as good as the remake of Hills Have Eyes 1,
yeah.
the remake of Hills Have Eyes 2 is still a bazillion times better
Oh,
than the sequel to the original Hills Have Eyes 2. I was like, so, so I mean, theoretically, you think it's a
truer words were
better
never
remake.
spoken.
That's the astronomical. Like I said, not even saying that because like I said, the remake of Part 2 isn't that great, but
No.
compared to the original Part 2, it's a masterpiece.
If we so like for the sake of this particular showdown, it's just more proper to start with it just works out that way. Yes, Hills Have Eyes, and again, I do feel this way. That's one of the reasons why I picked it, and you were down for it when we were discussing it. Look, I've met Michael Berryman, and that's what I had him sign. Despite the fact that he's not actually the main character of the original Hills Have Eyes, the first time I ever had Michael Berryman, he's always been, and again, this might have a lot to do with his look because, he has built a career off of his look and certain health situations that are not normal. But he has always been the main guy kind of focused on for the original Hills Have Eyes, despite the fact he's kind of a secondary character. So anyway, the first time I ever met Michael Berryman, well, frankly, the only time I met Michael Berryman, what I had him sign was my Hills Have Eyes DVD because he is the main person on the fucking cover, despite being a secondary character. But that just is what it is. But I do still feel that this is a better remake. And that's one of the reasons why I picked it. You agreed with it. It worked best for this situation. But fuck, Devil, you're not wrong, dude. When you talk about what might possibly be the gold standard of a better remake, the Hills Have Eyes 2 remake versus the Hills Have Eyes 2 original, it is such a vicious, brutal stomping of the original because while the second remake does not hold a candle to the original, in my opinion, and it seems that's your opinion as well, it is psychotically better than the original sequel to the original. It is like kind of shocking how bad and lopsided that is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
for
got a
sure.
really great cover. It's got a really great movie poster and a really great DVD cover. I actually like it quite a bit. It's kind of this weird psychedelic multicolored thing. But as far as a film, it's shockingly inferior.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably like I said, it's probably on there where like if you were gonna go better sequels or better remakes of a second movie, like of a sequel, then it would probably be up there as the best remake. And like I said, it's not even that remake is amazing. It's just because of how horrible the original is
Yeah.
that remake makes it seem astronomically better.
It's definitely crazy, man. But anyway, Devil, when it comes to the obituaries, like here's the thing, man. Honestly, I'll keep it pretty short and sweet when it comes to this. I really do like this movie. I hold it in high regards. I like the way it's shot. I like the use of the characters. I love the plot, and I like the parallel storylines. Do I think it's the most epically awesome movie or of all time? Hell no. It's never going to be up there for me. But as far as just a movie, in the idea of the obituaries of a movie that I think is just quality, an enjoyable experience if you're into that bloodlust and you're not overly squeamish, because again, just like you and I have discussed, there are genuine trigger warnings for people in real life that's important to at least mention is a possibility in this movie, because there's some real life things that can happen in real life in this movie. Overall, I really do find this to be a really solid movie. I think it's well written. I think it's well shot. And I think they put some real thought into the story they were trying to tell, knowing that it's a remake. I don't go overly high, but I do think it's of quality. I like this movie at a 7.5.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I think a 7.5 is a good one because like I said, when it comes to the remakes and stuff like that, like I said, I think uh I think this one is one of the better ones, when it comes to it, just because like you said, you kind of modernized it a little bit more. You made it where it had a little bit more of a budget, a little bit more, like I said, the original ones being, the original being done in the 70s,
Yeah.
kind of had that, 70s feel to it. So, like I said, and like you were talking about before with the Dawn of the Dead, I mean, I know a lot of people will talk about it and stuff like that. I have no problems with that Dawn of the Dead remake. I think it's really
Yeah.
amazing. I just don't think it's better than the original
Same.
movie, but I think as far as remakes go, it's one of the better remakes out there. It's just that we're talking about remakes that are better than the original. And like
Yeah.
I said, even though I do really love the Dawn of the Dead remake, I just don't think it's as good as the original one. Where the same way with
Agreed.
this, I really, like I said, I love the original Hills Have Eyes. I've always loved that, but I felt like this is a better
It's better
version of Hills Have
representation.
Eyes. Yep. So I'm down with that 7.5. I think 7.5 is a good scoring for the Alexander Aja's Heels Have Eyes.
Absolutely, my friend. So let's get into another gentleman who we hold in high regard. Like I said, I love Crispin Glover's like just ability to be an absolutely bitchin' character actor, because I really do think that he's underappreciated in that role. But let's talk, as I pass it over to you, my friend, let's talk about his relationship with many, many Master Splinters.
Yeah, I mean when it comes to Crispin Glover, I've always been a fan of him. Unfortunately, a lot of people have said that he's hard to work with because he's a very character actor. He definitely is very eccentric and definitely, wants things done a certain way, and he kind of off puts a lot of people. But I've always been a huge fan of his. Like you were talking about, Back to the Future, stuff like that. I even throw, when you throw in, the Charlie's Angels, I'll throw in a little funny bone there with the hot tub time machine. You know what I
Oh,
mean? With
dude,
the whole entire time you're
the
waiting for his
fucking
arm to get
arm.
for the arm to go off. I mean, I thought that character was great. I've always been a fan of his. I just love his weird kookiness and stuff like that. I always felt like he would be before, I guess, before we got to Tim Burton's doing the remake of Willy Wonka. I always thought that Crispin Glover would be the perfect Willy Wonka because he's just that weird, kooky, creepiness, to him and to his character as an actors. And like I
Devil,
said,
that is not a bad thought, bro. Like, I think because of Johnny's relationship, long-standing relationship with Tim, is probably the reason why, like, that probably went
yeah,
down that
I
way.
mean Tim, I mean
But with
Tim
what
did
you
put
said,
him in
sorry,
Alice
Devil,
in
real quick,
Wonderland.
brother, but like you said, dude, now that it's rattling in my brain, dude, that would have been cool.
I mean, Tim definitely is on the radar. I mean, he was in the Alice in Wonderland. It
Yep.
was he was the king of the Knight of Knives or
The Night of
whatever.
Nines.
Yeah. So I mean, so he was on there, but yeah, I mean, I've always been a huge fan, and like I said, I've always been a huge fan of the original Willard. To me, I mean, I've liked the original Willard. I've always been. I mean, if we want to go better sequels, I've always thought Ben was a better movie. I've always liked Ben. I've always liked it because I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan, and I love the song Ben. And I think it's kind of funny that this is a remake of the original Willard, but they do put the Ben song in this movie.
I
And then
thought that was cool too.
and the two versions that they put in this is so great. So you finally get Ben the song in it. And yeah, unfortunately it's during one of the most brutal and sad parts of the movie because it's the part where the cat gets killed by all the rats, and you're like, your whole time you're like, man, I'm feeling real bad for this cat. You know what I mean? You're like, God damn it, why they?
For the record, Mrs. Vamp was upstairs for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say she definitely wouldn't like that scene, but I do like whenever they bring back the Ben song, they give it a little Crispin Glover spin to it, and he's singing the song, and I always thought that was really cool. But like I said, I've always liked this movie. I think it's just a cool movie. It's got like I said, it's got him and it's got Arlie Army in it. I'm a huge fan of his. Full Metal Jacket and all that kind of stuff like that. I've always been a fan of his, and he just plays those asshole characters that you
Oh
just
God.
hate. And you mean the whole entire time you're just like rooting for Crispin. You're like, you can't wait till you get to the scene where he gets his demise, and you know what I mean. So you know, like I said, I've always liked this movie. I've always liked it because it's just it's very even the storyline of it's very psycho kind of like feel to it, where
100%.
he's living with his mother. His mother is like not the greatest person in the world, and he was more of like he was more of his dad kind of a person, but his dad had passed away. Well, I mean, in this movie, his dad committed suicide, but him living with the mom, and the mom kind of like, no, you're a dirty boy, or no, you can't do this, or no, you can't do
Kind of got
that.
a
It's
bit of
just
a carry that feeling.
Carrie feel to it, very psycho, you know what I mean? Like that Norman Bates kind of character. So you understand like the loneliness of this character, and like him, befriending, what would be rats. And that's what I like about this movie too, is like, in a world, and even though this movie is not that super old, it still came out in like, I think it came out in 2004 maybe,
Free.
or three. So around there. So like 20 some years ago, in the world of 2000s where you're pretty much CGI and everything, I give kudos to them using over 500 real rats that were
Right.
all trained for specific reasons. These rats are meant to go up this
Fans
and
in that
rats to go
career.
doing that, rats that are made to chew, rats that were trained to do this, rats that were trained to do that, rats that were trained to go up him, go into the briefcases. You know what I mean? I love the fact that, yeah, it's the real rats, and Ben's a big motherfucker.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Devil, for sure. And that's the thing I always found like really, really interesting too, is because of course you've got, Willard, his obsession with like Socrates, like his first real friend. But then you kind of have Ben, who's like the jealous lover, like kind of that like second banana who like obviously gets a name because you don't hear names so much for like the rest of them. There's Socrates, there's Ben, and there's everybody else. Um, and that was the thing I always found like really, really interesting. And it was this very bizarre dynamic where it was like, hey, did Ben just always want to be the power player? So did he dislike the fact that Socrates was the favorite and he was basically the guy that Willard always told to go do stuff? Take the rats to go this. Tell them, chew, tear it up, do all that kind of stuff. But then when it came to Arlie Ermy, killing Socrates, and you watch Ben watching, you see Willard watching, and then they circle back around to it where he's like, it wasn't my fault. You saw that there was nothing I could do. Was it really, though, that Ben was pissed at Willard for letting Socrates die, or was Ben happy that his particular competition was eliminated and allowed him to be the main dominant figure? Because again, you can say what you want about the Willard character as a human, as a big, broad force. That doesn't change the fact that any one big, broad force, if you're going up against a smaller, littler force, that's one thing. And that would be like Bigfoot stepping on a Smurf. But Bigfoot going up against 500 Smurfs, suddenly the ideas, the potential, you know, how am I trying to say it? Basically, it's like a level playing field. It's like more like that. It's like, okay, you look at this big dominant figure easily able to squash something small. But if there's a lot of small things, now they've got a real dog in the fight and they can kind of carry them on. Just like we were talking about with Dawn of the Dead earlier. It's like, look, one or two zombies, you can get away from them. But at the same time, if there's a shit ton of zombies, now all of a sudden you realize that you've got a lot to worry about. And that was the one thing I thought was really cool. I loved the idea of Arlie Ermy being this kind of like prick that like did or didn't fuck over the family and take over the business, and basically is like, you're only employed here due to a technicality because I promised your family that you would always have a job here, but you're a shitbag and I hate you and you waste my time. But just like you said, Arlie Ermy is an amazing character actor for that kind of, again, Full Metal Jacket, you know, comparison, but like that just kind of like aggressive, militant, dictator type. He's just great in those roles. Even something more on a comedy aspect of like Saving Silverman, if you've ever seen that movie, Devil,
Yeah.
Arlie has that same type of delivery and it's fantastic. But anyway, staying on point, it's the idea of like Willard being shackled kind of under the thumb because this is my dad's company. Well, be that as it may, your dad's no longer in charge. So he's got this kind of strength to it. But that doesn't change the fact that, like, he's got his lackeys that are fulfilling all of his wishes in both execution as far as just as far as torment when it comes to the tires. But is Willard as in control as he thinks he is, or is there a little bit of this, AI type situation when it comes to like nowadays when, we talk about movies like Megan, for example, where AI is such a dominant thing. Again, you want to boss around these rats, but what happens if they all realize that they are better strength than numbers? So it's a very interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, I mean, especially like especially in the beginning of the film, I mean, I love it whenever he goes out to destroy the bosses, Ariel Emery's car, you know what I mean? He's just like, no, Ben, you can't go because if you go into the suitcase, nobody else can fit because you're too damn big. And you know what happens? He's not paying attention. All the rats go in. Ben goes in. All the rats go back out because he's too big. And then he goes in there like, first of all, how do you go that much of a distance and realize that you would know the difference? I mean, even like weight. I
Wait,
mean, even weight wise. Let's say this one rat still weighs the same as 20 or 30 rats, but 20 or 30 rats spread over would just the weight distribution would you would notice like, okay, this weighs about the same, but why does it seem it's only centered in this one spot versus overall? So never, so it was like, okay, but obviously he opens it up, it's freaking Ben. He's like, oh damn it, you know, whatever, Ben, you're too fat to get in underneath there anyway. Oh yeah, right. I'll just take out more. I can bite more chunks. And I kind of feel like that's how it was, when Socrates gets killed. I feel like, like you said, he's favored Socrates. Socrates is number one. Socrates is the boss. Socrates gets, he's got to stay down in the basement, and with all the other, the other rats. Socrates gets to go upstairs and gets to sleep with Willard and kind
The
of
cushy
get
bed.
get to bed and get all that kind of stuff like that. So obviously, the jealousy of Socrates, and then him going into the bag with him go to work, and he's like, "No, you can't go to work with me." And Socrates is like, "Come on, man. Let's just, let's all get together and be all good." And he's like, "I'm gonna let you go because Socrates." And I kind of feel like when it came to that, that was Ben's whole motive. I believe that the rat that the girl saw to begin with was Ben,
Yeah,
because he's so big, he's kind of hard not to not notice. But then he hid, and obviously, whenever he was hiding good enough, she was, poking around, and obviously Socrates couldn't go, and she's like, "Oh, see, I saw all right," and then Socrates got it. So, in my opinion, I always felt like Ben basically, sacrifice Socrates. But like you said, because he knew that once he got Socrates out of there, he would be number one. He would be that, but he really wasn't the whole entire time. He's crying. He put Socrates in the ashes with his dad's urn and all that, and then that's when he's like, okay, he tries to trick him and tries to give Ben the food with the poison. With the rat poison in the trap in there, and Ben's like, yeah, gets trapped and takes off an arm, but Ben's like, yeah, I might be able to. I can survive with one hand, but you got to realize, man, now you just fucked up because, yeah, you think the rats are loyal to you, but the rats are actually loyal to me. I'm
yeah,
the big macho. I'm the boncho. Yeah, you might have thought Socrates was number one. Socrates was your favorite, but Socrates didn't demand the army. So, if Big Ben told those rats, "Don't chew, don't go in things," Socrates wouldn't have gotten it straight. Big Ben, this was my house. This has always been Big Ben's house, and that's why he was kind of getting pissed. He's like, he's the one that's, the muscle in this army of rats, and he's not getting. Socrates is kind of just there. He's just a pretty face. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And the thing, and yeah, he gets it. And like you said, when you piss off you big honcho, like you said, when you piss off AI, eventually AI is gonna realize, hey man, I don't need you. And they're like, shit, we don't need this guy, man. Like fuck him, man. We can do whatever we want to do. We've revolutionized. We know how to organize. We know how to work, and we know how to do it. And I just love the fact that, yeah, it's just like the little bit of rats that you see throughout the movie, especially with him going in the bag and stuff like that. But when you
Yeah.
see all those rats, man, in the house, man, when they're going after him after it's bad, it's like, Jesus, man, that's a lot of fucking rats, man. It's like I said, especially even like you feel like, even like the cat scene in that scene, you know what I mean? He sees that one little one, and he goes up, and then all of a sudden he gets up on the counter, gets up on that, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh shit, he sees more, and then he jumps trying to get, but you knew that hole was where Ben liked to lay around and chill, so he was gonna go, and then cat flops down, and you're like, yep, I'm sorry, cat, you may be, bigger, but with thousands of rats, you're a goner. And the same thing with that. That's why I love the, fans and infernos who may have seen the original Willard. That's what I liked about this original. I mean, I liked the ending of the original one, because in the original one they do kill Will, they do kill him. Where I like in this one where he kind of goes, goes crazy. They're like, yeah, this dude's living in a house full of rats, man. He's nuts. He obviously, we found out, they figured out that the girl found out that he's the one that went and sent these rats to kill his boss. So they put him in a mental institution, and, lo and behold, another little rat comes out. Another Socrates 2 comes out.
I know it, and it's funny, Devil, because it's got similarities to the ending of Psycho, and that's the only thing. And I'll go a little bit more into detail, but it's one of the few things that I didn't love as much with this movie as a sequel. While it's definitely still, I agree with you that it's 100% a better sequel, but
remake.
I felt, I'm sorry, yeah, remake, is that it went a little bit off the grid when it came to influences. And again, I love influences. I love when people put their heart on their sleeve and also, show things that matter to them. But you and I have spoken about Carrie, we've spoken about Psycho. And that was a very kind of interesting direction for them to go with the remake, where the original movie had this definitive end. The remake was almost also a retelling of a different movie completely. And it was just kind of that unique thing where, of course, when it comes to Psycho, it was all about that fly buzzing around almost like a friend. But he's like, you know what? I'm just going to show that I'm okay, that I would never even hurt a fly. And it had that same kind of feel to it where Socrates number two, same look, same color, kind of came out as like his new friend. And I always found that to be kind of an interesting thing where when I was watching the movie, I mean, I already knew about it because I had seen Willard. But revisiting it, and again, when you and I watch movies for discussion, you kind of pay attention a little bit closer. And it's like, yeah, I remember all of that. But I'm like, I feel like I have to address that, or I don't know how I necessarily feel that. Again, does not take away from my good time. I think the movie's great. But it was a very, very interesting choice when it comes to changing the ending. Kind of kind of reminds me of like we didn't do this as a better remake, but back when we talked about My Bloody Valentine, the end of those movies are very similar, but they're backwards. And that was kind of a very interesting way to do it. When you're remaking a movie that was designed this way with this story to tell, but then you're flipping or tweaking two characters to tell a different outcome. And that was just something I found very interesting. Again, I love the idea. It at least as of right now, it has never come to fruition. I love the idea of a Willard 2 if they really decided to take a real shot at it. You obviously need Willard, and in my opinion, you need Crispin to portray that again properly. But I did find that to be very interesting that for a remake movie, they did a different ending. And it wasn't so much that, but it did feel to me like they did another person's ending. And I found that to be a little bit of a questionable direction. But again, doesn't take away from my good time. I just found it was a unique way to go. And I am a firm believer in like wearing your influences on your sleeve. So I do like to reiterate that point. But for a completely different design of movie that had similarities because of the mom factor, I felt it was a little bit strange, a little odd to go that direct with the ending, where it matched up a little bit too close to comfort, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, I can definitely see that. But like I said, I kind of liked it. I liked it better where, it didn't end, it didn't end the way that it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, him go. I mean, the only other way to end it from him not dying is to go into a mental institution. So
100%.
I kind of feel like that's really the only way, unless he miraculously gets away somehow. But I just didn't see how that was going to happen either. So it's like either, you only have three outcomes. He gets killed, you know, gets locked up. No one's going to put him in a prison. They're going to put him in a mental institution, and or he escapes. Or not escapes, but like you know doesn't get caught. But I was like, I kind of feel like that wasn't really a particular ending that would work very well either. So maybe they did it. Maybe they did an ending where they kind of like saw it and was like, okay, tested it and didn't really like the him getting away or something like that. They wanted to
Good
change
point.
it, so they were like, oh, okay, let's just do this. Even though, yeah, people may or may not add similarities to, like you said, the ending of Psycho and stuff like that. So like I said, who knows? But like I said, I always felt like it could have, it leaned itself to a possibility of a sequel where, like you said, like in the original one, you figured it wasn't going to be a sequel, and then they did make a sequel, but it wasn't quite a sequel that you were expecting. It was more
Right.
of Ben. It was Ben's sequel and not
And
Willard's
story.
sequel.
Yeah. No, 100% Devil for sure, man. And as we pop into the obituaries, as we decide how we want to end this showdown and compare them against each other, what are you thinking there, my friend?
I mean, for me, like I said, I mean, honestly, before we started to give the Hills Have Eyes remake the score that we gave, which we both agreed on 7.5, I was kind of feeling that that's where I was gonna go with Willard, but I kind of feel like if we went that way, if I was gonna go 7.5 with Willard, I would had to have gone a little bit lower with Hills Have Eyes. Because not saying that I don't think that the Hills Have Eyes remake is not a better remake. I just think that the original Hills Have Eyes is strong film. And the remake is a better remake, but it's also a strong film. Where I
Sure.
feel like the original Willard was a good movie, but not nearly as good as as the remake is. So like
Definitely agree there.
like in a world where like if we gave the original Hills Have Eyes, let's say we gave it, okay, obviously we gave the remake a 7.5, so let's say we would probably maybe give the remake a like a 6.5 or a 7, or the original one a 6.5 or a 7.
Yeah.
Where okay, so if we agreed on Willard being a 7.5, the remake, the original, I would go as low as saying a 5 or a
Agreed.
5.5, because I think that this movie is good, but the original one, like I said, it was okay, but I was always more of a fan of Ben versus the Willard one.
Yeah.
So
This one's
so
definitely superior.
yeah, so for me, that's the only reason why I'm gonna say an 8.0 for Willard, because if we're gonna go, I think that this this remake was better because it's more superior than the original film, where yes, The Hills Have Eyes is a better remake, but it's not that much superior over the original.
I can definitely get with you on that, Devil. I definitely understand there. So I don't match you at eight. I actually go to seven personally, but this is the way I see it. Again, it's going to land at a 7.5 collectively, so it'll end in a tie. And we'll have a little brief discussion on how we see things going. So again, I like Willard. Again, I love Crispin Glover. So much amazing movies that he's been in, stuff that I've addressed, stuff that you've addressed. When it comes to the movie, I just think it's not so much a lacking. It's again, just like you said, incredibly strong, and it's vastly superior to its original counterpart, where Hills Have Eyes is still superior, but its counterpart is closer. It's a better designed movie. But I do look at Willard as an overall 7.0 for myself personally. Again, I like the movie. I enjoy it. I think Crispin is great. But there's a simplicity, but also a little bit too close to an original movie idea that I felt that it is great when movies, like I said, hold inspirations on their, show their inspirations on their sleeve. Though when certain choices are made that I think are a little bit too much like what might have inspired you, that is some stuff that I notice, and that's stuff that I look at personally. So again, while there's so much Psycho with touches of Carrie to it, which I'm all for, it's the end of the movie being a different design from the original Willard and being a little bit closer to what might have caused its inspiration is something that I do feel I need to address and is something that I do take into my consideration. So anyway, that being said, I see it as a 7. We tend to meet in the middle at a 7.5 as long as you're cool with that. Now, that being said, with them both being a tie, I do feel there's an overall dynamic when it comes to The Hills Have Eyes that I do think is an overall stronger movie and an overall stronger execution. While it's still closer to what brought it to the dance, where there's differences to the new Willard that separated from the original Willard, which I think is worth taking into consideration because that can often be very strong. And I do think also does make for a stronger movie. I do think
that Hills Have Eyes has the potential to sit as a solid standalone movie itself versus Willard, I do think has the tendency to make more people wonder if it's a little bit too similar to a Psycho than its own standalone style. So while I do think they are both tied in their strengths, I do swing the needle to Hills Have Eyes personally for the idea of a potential stronger movie where you don't think about something else versus Willard, where I think you do. But I do want to say that with that cannibalistic, post apocalyptic feel, not fully post apocalyptic, obviously, because then you wouldn't have characters like the broken down, RV, House of a Thousand Corpses style. There are similarities, but I do feel like Hills Have Eyes, if you left it alone, has the potential to kind of be its own thing, where Willard has the ability and maybe triggers more of your other interests. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. I just feel like it might make you wonder on if a little bit too much was pulled by something that, preceded it, as opposed to just going by itself. But that's kind of how I look at it. It's a very, very close meter, but I kind of see the needle swinging towards Hills Have Eyes personally. But I'll tell you, Devil, I really do think it's close.
I guess I understand where you're coming from. I don't know though. I feel like, if you're talking about the changes, I mean, there's the changes in Hills Have Eyes are even different. Those were
100%.
just they were just in the original one they were just people who lived in the hills. They made this one more about the contamination of nuclear fallout and stuff like that, which that has been done over and over and over again too as
Facts.
well.
Can't take that
So
away from you. That's a really good
and
point.
yeah, and to nod. I mean, the nod towards Carrie, maybe a little bit. The nod towards Psycho, you really can't blame anyone for doing that, since Psycho is the epitome of what became horror films. It's the original, like, mainstream horror film. You know what I mean? That is like the first big, huge action, horror film that basically what presents what to everybody. So I mean, and you got to realize, like, yeah, it's a little bit of that. I mean, it's just I think a lot of it's just because the fact that if you if you didn't have him being at home with a mother, you wouldn't get those references to Psycho. But then
Fair enough.
again, if he wasn't a loner that didn't have an overbearing mom that made him weird and kooky and unlikable as a character and unlikable in the society, then he wouldn't have befriended a rat to begin with. Normal people aren't befriending rats. People
That's
who have
that's
been,
true.
or people who are shut in, who are, lived by an obedient mother or an obedient father that live under their wing, are gonna be the lonely types that are gonna be the weirdos that are gonna eventually end up becoming friends with a rat, or killing their mother and digging him up and talking to his mother and dressing up as his mother and stuff like that. I
You're
mean, if his
you're
mom
not
if his
wrong.
mom wasn't that way, Norman Bates wouldn't have done any of that kind of stuff if his mom
True.
wasn't that way. So
And
it's
you're definitely not wrong on that too, Devil, because there are also certain things to keep in mind too, that even with the changes, whether I feel that they're eerily reminiscent of a previous movie, doesn't change the fact that it is a climactic finish to Willard, which actually plays to its strengths, as opposed to Hills Have Eyes, which sets up for a sequel that it did have, that may or may not, depending on the person you talk to and depending on whether they did or didn't like it, that may or may not have hurt it in a long run, depending on whether or not the second movie had enough strengths compared to the first. Me personally, I don't think the second Hills Have Eyes remake is on the same level as the original. And it damn sure does not show that the second original remake is absolutely not on the level of the original when it came to Wes Craven's design. So that's also something that's worth taking into consideration too, is Willard does have strength in a standalone be all end all with hints to what in what started the genre, where again, there's a lot of strength in The Hills Have Eyes. I really enjoy that movie. I can watch it more than once. I can watch it somewhat regularly. I don't, but I can. And that's something that you know, again, both of us having very, very massive collections, things kind of like get lost occasionally in the shuffle. But can I watch The Hills Have Eyes on the regular? I absolutely do. I mean, I absolutely can. I just don't. But that's more because it's got so much other stuff that a person can watch. But I will say that Willard definitely does have strength as a standalone movie compared to The Hills Have Eyes, which ends with a teaser to a sequel that did happen that, depending on who you ask, might have enhanced it, might have also hurt it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna pose a thing. Let's go by the strength of the two big names in this films. Let's go with, we'll go with, obviously, with our Buffalo Bill.
Yep.
Now I'm drawing a blank of his the actual actor's name for a second, but and Vanessa Shaw, obviously from Hocus Pocus,
Yeah,
as
Ted
the two.
Levine. Ted Levine.
Yeah, Ted Levine. So we're gonna put those two as the two big hitters in this film. So we have those two, and then we'll put Ermy and Crispin Glover. Who do you like as the better pair, as far
I
as
put a
like
spell on you. Now
as
you're
far as character, yeah, but as far as either character wise or
fucking.
like in their movie wise, yes, who doesn't love Ted Levine? We love him. Buffalo Bill, he's been in other stuff, but everybody just knows him more for Buffalo Bill. That's his big one movie. Where Vanessa Shaw, we love her. She's been in a bunch of other stuff like that. But the big one people are going to remember are Hocus Pocus. I put it on you with Ari Lermy. He's got a roster of films that you'll remember him from. Crispin Glover has a roster of films that you'll remember him from. That's my only reason why I lean a little bit more towards, if we're going to do it that way with the cast, with Ari Lermy and Crispin Glover
I'll give it to
the.
you, Devil. Nope, it's all good. You and I have talked casts many, many times, and you're not wrong. A good point is a good point because, again, just like you said, Ted and Vanessa have really great catalogs.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
both have that dynamic heavy hitter where you're like, Jesus, like you get hit by Silence of the Lambs or you get hit by Hocus Pocus, your jaw's gonna be sore. You're gonna have felt that shot. But again, if you just take the simplisticness of just the minimal part of Crispin and Arlie Ermey's catalogs, you're taking Willard, Saving Silverman, and again, I'm just using that as a basic cushion, but again, Full Metal Jacket. And then you're also taking Willard, you know, Charlie's Angels, again, that's my cushion one, but then you've also got Back to the Future, where you've got, at least two per person against one per person. So ultimately, Devil, I can't get mad at you for it, man, because you do make a really good point. Because when it comes to movies and when it comes to execution of films and certain showdowns, it's not uncommon and very much a regularity that the cast of a movie matters in the long run. So at a 7.5, can we agree at the numbers for 7.5 per? But we'll give it to you, Devil. You can't argue against a good point that holds merit. So that's the way it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos. Bam! Victory to the Devil in a very, very awesome showdown and an excellent, excellent point when it comes to the secondary follow-up of what ultimately is a tie at 7.5 for the Hills Have Eyes remake and a 7.5 at Willard, the remake. But all kudos and recognition to the points that Devil made when it came to strength of cast. While again, we understand that sometimes you can get a little bit too close when it comes to what brought you to the dance and your inspirations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a detriment to your movie. And again, so much strength when it came to The Hills Have Eyes, when it comes to the movie that it was versus the movie it came from, and whether or not a sequel enhanced or took away from the franchise is different strokes for different folks. But we're going to keep it at how we discussed it, and at matching scores, we're going to give all of the credit for the, again, the very, very excellent point that cast matters. So again, victory to the Devil. At a 7.5, Willard will take out Hills Have Eyes at a 7.5 as well. Fangs and Infernos, we love you guys to death. We appreciate all the support that you give myself and, of course, the Devil with everything that we get to do when it comes to the Vampire and Devil podcast. Now, that also means showing love to the people that look out for us. So please go over to rockinghorror.com and support our friends Mark and Lizzie, because that is the only place that you can get exclusive Vampire and Devil merch is at rockinghorror.com under the Vampire and Devil collab category. If you like it hot, just like the Devil, please make sure that you're having your tea and enjoying Brutalities. Our friends are fantastic. So many amazing flavors and everything that they do, and we really appreciate all of the support that they give us. So please make sure that you're supporting Brutalities and all of their amazing flavors. They're at all kinds of cons, and they really, really put the grind in. Also, our buddy Chris at the Buffalo Bill House. Since we were talking about Ted Levine,
We're talking about Buffalo himself.
yeah, let's talk a little bit about Buffalo Bill. Our buddy Chris owns the Buffalo Bill House. It is an amazing bed and breakfast experience. Not traditional bed and breakfast. You own the house for the duration of your stay. It's an amazing experience. Myself, Devil, Mrs. Vamp, we all went there as a group. We had an amazing time. Dude, Chris, we love you, brother. And of course, our friends Chris and Saren, who own Twisted Vines for all your creepy decor. We really, really appreciate them as well. And of course, our beloved John Kozik, who owns, the Salem Witchboard Museum and the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore. Please support these amazing independent museums to keep them in the forefront and keep them populated and keep them with us. But that's the way it's going to be. Circling it back around, Devil takes this one as Willard takes out The Hills Have Eyes. We'll see you soon. Horns up. Fangs out. Devil, my friend, I think it's time that we spill the tea. Brutalities. Vampire and Devil podcast couldn't be more excited, more humbled to let you all know that we have partnered with very dear friends of ours for a long time in Brutalities. And there's so much great stuff, so many flavors, so much to enjoy, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about it. Isn't that right there, my friend?
Oh yeah, we like it hot. Of course the Inferno likes it hot. Do you like the hot tea? Well, you might as well get some Brutality. Yeah, horror movies, puns, rock and roll, Brutality's got it all.
Absolutely. When it comes to the vampire, you know that he's going to absolutely gravitate towards that Nosferatu or that Nosferatu brew. Absolutely a favorite of mine. And we got to show a little bit love to, by all means, the biggest franchise in horror right now. That would be Terrifier. So Brutalities has brought you Terrifier. But that's just from the vampire. The Devil has some favorites of his own.
Oh yeah, do you like the movie Pumpkinhead? Well, how about a little pumpkin bread for your throat holes? And like I said, with the rock and roll fans and the horror fans, Wednesday 13 fans, do you like Wednesday 13 and tea? How about a couple of those? With the Summertime Suicide and a couple other ones too. So if you like Wednesday 13 and you like the tea and you like the Brutalities, go to the website.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we like to look out for those that look out for us. We love you, Fangs. We love you, Infernos. But as a courtesy from Brutalities to be bestowed on you, we have that Vampire and Devil coupon code, don't we, my friend?
Oh, yeah. You want to save a little dough, little cheddar, maybe buy some more shit? Go on the line, Brutalities, type in Vampire and Devil, and you get 10% off your order. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So it's getting into the chilly weather. People need to warm their bones. They need to warm what little skin they may or may not have. But Brutalities is the way to get it done. So that's the way it's going to be because Vampire and Devil said so. Horns up, fangs out for Brutalities. All right, Fangs and Infernos, got a fresh brand new Coffin Nails to discuss with you, and we're going to take it back to 2005 as we talk about Way of the Vampire. Not too bad of a premise when it came to this movie. It's based off Bram Stoker's short stories of Dracula. So overall, it had a good skeleton, it had a good design, but a lot of indie films, just bad execution, and this is no different. When it came to the throwback scenes of like how the movie began taking place hundreds of years ago, I really did like the color editing that they did for the movie. I thought it was really cool. It was shot in this kind of like darker kind of blue, so it kind of had this like silver, black, white kind of aesthetic to it with the blue mixed in when it was, talking about back then. And then when it came to like modern times, it was just very basic modern, all the standard colors, like standard execution. So basically the deal is centered around Abraham Van Helsing after he defeated Dracula. But of course, there's still vampires out and about. He is about to lose the woman he loves, so he makes a deal with the church that by drinking the blood of Christ, he'll be able to live on. But he won't be able to go to heaven until he rids the world of all the vampires. But if he were to drink vampire blood and feed, then he would become a vampire himself. Very, very interesting premise. As far as a movie execution, I would have loved to have seen what they could have done with it with a real budget. Because again, it is based off Bram Stoker's short story, so it's always going to have that really solid writing behind it. But again, execution-wise, it's just a very, very basic premise, a very, very basic, amount of money, and it shows. So overall, the acting is subpar. It's got its moments, and it's got its stuff to be enjoyed when it comes to this. But when it came to the slaying of the head vampire, very, very poorly done. When it came to whether they did or didn't kill the second in command in order to allow Van Helsing to finally go to heaven, that kill was, or attempted a kill, or whatever it was very weak as well. Overall, look, it's interesting enough. Check it out if you want to, but it's not going to get anything higher from me than a 4, despite the fact that I love the editing and I like the color scheme. So 4 is the way it gets, Way of the Vampire.
Ghouls and Fangs, Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a 3-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe. We've got John Waters. But what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bazaar Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah, if you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards, he knows his history, he's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And we love it. We love the fact that, they were going to bring in this museum here in Baltimore, so all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans that are maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out, you know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you got to check it out because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bazaar Oddities shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum, or off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, fangs out.